My mug has my face on it.
I got Pioneer Woman mug.
With flowers?
You brought me this. It's very nice.
Thank you.
It's hot.
It is very hot.
Ice cubes, please.
We'll get you some. Hi there, guys. For those of you who don't know, my name's Cody. I have schizophrenia.
I'm Allison. I have autism.
I've been living with schizophrenia since I was about 18, and I was diagnosed at the age of 21.
I've been living with autism forever, and I was diagnosed at 29.
So Allison's diagnosis is super recent, and in light of recent events, we started sharing more about her diagnosis, in which Allison decided she kind of wanted to start advocating like I do. So we thought a cool way to do that would be a little less stressful than her making daily videos. We thought we would do a podcast, and we're going to call it the NeuroBlend Podcast, where we're going to have conversations over coffee. Together. And we're going to do this. This is going to be a weekly project. So we'll have a podcast every week. It'll come out Monday morning, bright and early to start your Monday. We're currently doing a crowdfunding to see if we can raise money to get some new equipment, microphones, an interface system, and to also look at maybe paying for an editor. So if you guys are interested in donating to this podcast, the link will be in the description down below. But I'm going to start off by telling you guys a little bit about me and my journey, and then I'm going to hand it over to Allison to talk about her very recent diagnosis of autism and ADHD. We're also going to talk about what we'd like to discuss while doing this podcast. So obviously we want to talk about both of our diagnosis. We also are going to talk about caregiving from both perspectives. We also want to talk about basically anything to do with neurodivergent people. So we're going to have on guests. We're going to have a lot of just us sitting here and talking about our own lived experiences.
And probably Squishmallows.
And Allison will probably always have a Squishmallow with her. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So I know a lot of you probably already know a lot about my journey because you follow me. But for those of you who don't know, I just want to give an overview of my experience with schizophrenia and addiction, and then tell you a little bit about how I got started with social media and what led to this podcast. And then I'll let Allison introduce herself and do the same. Before I was ever diagnosed with schizophrenia, I was actually raised by my mother, who has schizoaffective disorder. Because of her diagnosis, I already had a pretty decent understanding about what schizophrenia was, and I was aware that because she had it, that there was a possibility that I could also develop it because there is a genetic component to schizophrenia. I started having symptoms in my first year of college, which led to a psychotic break, and that eventually led to my addiction and incarceration. I've been doing social media for about 4 years now. I got started on TikTok. And I never really planned on doing advocacy or anything like that, but Allison started sending me a bunch of TikToks, and I was like, this is the stupidest app ever. I will never use this app. And then eventually I did download it and started making my own videos, and the first video that I made that went viral was called Schizophrenic Storytime, where I did a story about a time where I was in college living with schizophrenia. I had a hallucination, and that video went viral overnight, and that's kind of what got me started doing advocacy, speaking, and social media. Are you listening to your coffee?
I'm waiting for it to cool down.
Okay. and so a lot of my journey has been about schizophrenia and addiction primarily, but I also have talked about being a caregiver, and I'm really excited to do something with Allison now because she's been a big part of this journey. She's been a caregiver.
That's why our shirts match.
That is why our shirts match. And this says medicated and caffeinated. We are actually going to have a new version of this once the podcast releases of medicated and caffeinated shirts, but with the new NeuroBlend logo on it. Did you spill your coffee? Do you need a napkin?
You keep talking, I'll be back.
No, I can get you.
Oh, okay.
I'll just grab you a towel. Cody, can you just go ahead and edit this out? Thank you.
This is for a blooper reel.
Very first episode.
I didn't mean to bloop, though. It wasn't an intent. Well, that's what bloopers are, though.
Yeah. Very first episode, we already have a blooper reel started.
One bloop.
One bloop.
Several million to go. I have poor hand-eye coordination, which I'm sure we'll talk about on a future episode.
Yeah. And anyways, getting back to it. A new part of my advocacy journey that I haven't been able to talk a lot about has been becoming a caregiver for Allison. She, for a long time, had to be the primary caregiver and do a lot for me because of my schizophrenia diagnosis. And now we were finally able to get her diagnosis, and we're trying to help her more with meltdowns and just better understanding autism, because there's a lot I don't understand, and I know there's a lot you're still learning too. And so that, and also with ADHD. So I'm really excited to kind of get into this podcast. I think we're going to have a lot of really good conversations. The last week, since we've known we were going to do this, every time we think of a good topic, we're like, no, we got to save it for the podcast. So I'm really excited, but that's kind of my story in a short, condensed version. I want to allow Allison to talk, because a lot of people who follow me don't know a lot about Allison. I try not to post about her too much, just because, it's her story, it's her journey. I want her to be able to tell it a little bit. So I'm going to give you a little prompt intro here. Me and Allison have been dating since 2012. We got married in 2017, so we've been together forever. And Allison was actually with me before my schizophrenia diagnosis, and she was with me through my entire addiction and all of that. So before you tell us about why you wanted to do the podcast, can you talk about your diagnosis, how you got diagnosed so late, and kind of what that whole journey's been like?
Yeah, so I got diagnosed last year. 2000, was it last summer?
Yep.
Yeah. So last summer, and it was kind of quite a journey to get there. I feel like we started it.
It was a lot. Way harder than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I feel like Cody's maybe was quicker, but I feel like his symptoms, we'll get into talking about masking later podcasts, but that was part of the thing, but I'm trying not to get too in detail here. So, for several reasons, I never got diagnosed in my childhood, but the older I got, especially in my mid to late 20s, I noticed I wasn't keeping up with my peers quite as well as I thought I should be. Certain things that they were interested in, whether that's having kids or... I guess that was a major thing, but also just maturing out of certain interests. So whether that was movies I was into as a teenager, more like childhood interests, they didn't really care about anymore. And I just noticed, especially socially, I've always been kind of a bubbly, exuberant person, which when I was a child into teenage years, maybe early 20s, was received as, oh, fun, childlike. When you get to be closer to 30, it's not received as well. Maybe I've gotten treated kind of naively quite a bit, even though I'm pretty introspective. So that was one thing I started to notice, just how I'd always act wasn't kind of being received as well by other people, so that led really to a lot of masking of my autism traits, which at the time I didn't know was autism. So as the years went on, I suffered more with what I now know as burnout, but also a little bit of depression, just because of not keeping up with everyone.
Early on, too, I know when we had started wondering if there was, if you were struggling with a mental illness or something, we started noticing... at the time we thought were mood disorder issues, but were actually you having burnout and you having meltdowns.
Yeah.
And so I know that was part of the reason we were like, hey, we need to look into what this might be, because it was significant. A lot of people don't know because you mask in public. That's one of the things I know we've discussed is hard for people to see on the outside, because you did mask, and we didn't know until after you were diagnosed that that's really common in women, especially... that's why a lot of women get diagnosed later in life.
Or don't at all.
Or don't at all,
or
yeah.
A lot of times women will get diagnosed when their kids get diagnosed.
Yeah.
Because it has such a genetic component, so...
So their kids get diagnosed and they're like, well, maybe there's a reason for that.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of questions as to why now, and that's a major reason for that. as to why now. I think I reached a level of burnout where I was getting to the point where I couldn't mask in certain situations anymore, especially within my own home. I don't know if I ever fully masked around Cody, but there was some...
I think you tried.
I tried, with especially the more maybe unpleasant symptoms, such as meltdowns, just different things. I would try to mask, and it got to the point, not only could not at all around Cody anymore, I was getting to the point where I was isolating because I was starting to find I couldn't around loved ones, work, especially during the pandemic. I don't know how long it was, but I went through like a 2-year severe burnout.
Yeah.
After that, I think that's when I learned... I hadn't been diagnosed yet, but at that point, after that really severe burnout, it led me to really do some research. And I think we kind of got there through process of elimination. So for a while we suspected BPD just because of the mood escalation of, I don't know if this fits BPD, but this is what we thought at the time, 0 to 160, like that, with meltdowns. So that was something we suspected for a while, and did more research on that and realized didn't really fit.
Yeah.
And finally, through just research, learned about autism, and wow, everything did fit.
Yeah, it was...
There wasn't anything... And I don't want to say there's nothing that doesn't fit, but it fit enough where I was like, okay. And so I went to my primary doctor, who's been wonderful, but she's been trying to help me for years, because she could even tell something wasn't quite right. We tried different SSRIs and other medication just to help with more of the depressive episodes, and some of the anxiety type symptoms, which I now know were more sensory issues. So she'd been helping me since about 2018, but we just never really, we were more treating the outcome, but not actually figuring out what the issue was. And so after discovering autism, not discovering it, I'd obviously heard of autism.
You heard it here first. Allison Green discovered autism.
Oh.
Did you see the graphic go up just now?
I did. Because I'm a very visual thinker. I've seen very many things. So, but it's coming back to you now. She helped me since about 2018. I'd seen her quite a bit just with pretty severe depression. Try to bring this full circle here. Oh, so after discovering autism, or the fact that a lot of autistic symptoms fit myself, I walked into her office and I was like, hey, this is going to sound really out there, but I said, I think I would like to be tested for autism. I think that might be actually what's going on. And she literally, I can kind of reenact what she did. She looked up from her computer kind of at the wall like she was thinking, and she looked back at me and she's like, I would have never thought that, but now that you say it, and it was like a light bulb moment for her. And like, she didn't dismiss it at all. She it was like, whoa. Like, she thought that, was reasonable, I guess. And so that was just the beginning. I thought, oh, cool. Well, she doesn't think I'm like way out of whack for thinking this. So we're done. Diagnosis, because that was kind of how I feel your experience was. He walked in and he's like, hey, hallucinating, and they're like schizophrenic, and you're like, yeah.
No, my process did go way quicker, because it was like I got into a doctor actively hallucinating, delusional. My mom has schizophrenia, so like they got me into a doctor, right into a psychiatrist, and at the time there was still huge waits, but they got me right into a psychiatrist, couple weeks of testing and stuff like that, boom, schizophrenia diagnosis.
I would compare it to like ordering from Amazon versus eBay. Like, he did 2-day shipping Prime, and mine was like, well, you saved $10, you'll get it sometime in the next few months, and then you forgot about it, and then it's here. But anyway, after I had that visit with her, she put in a referral for diagnosis. But if anyone knows much about the mental health field right now, everything is short-staffed and really long wait times. And from that day, or that office visit, I want to say it was 1.5 to 2 years to when I actually had my diagnosis appointment. Because it took her a while to find someone that not only would be willing to see me for a diagnosis, like the process. Once I did she found a clinic that was willing to do that out of Madison, which is about 2 hours from where we were at the time.
Yeah.
So a little ways away, I had to get on their wait list, and I want to say their wait list at that time was 8 months.
Yeah, it took a long time.
Yeah, it was a while. So waited that 8 months, and then I think a couple months out from the appointment, they had me start filling out questionnaires, not only for myself, but Cody. My dad filled one out, and then a couple online surveys. That was more of the back end stuff. And I don't know how much we'll delve into this today, but then I had the actual in-person diagnosis appointment, and that was, or no, I had a prequel visit, which was over
Zoom.
Yeah, there's a term for it, but Zoom. That was like an hour-long appointment, kind of went into my history and things, and that appointment was literally just to see, is this a person we even are able or feel we should bring in for an in-person diagnosis appointment, because those are pretty lengthy.
Yeah.
And I think they're overbooked, so they don't want to,
And it wasn't like a quick day of, like, I came with to that, and I had to take several tests too as your spouse, things I've seen in you, and were we there like a full day, 6 hours or something?
You count parking the car, taking seatbelts off, waiting in the waiting room, all together I'd say maybe just shy of 4 or 5.
Okay,
So
yeah, it was a long day.
Yeah, I think I ended up calling down again, and then that's when they mailed me all the paperwork. I'm guessing maybe just behind, probably.
Yeah.
So then she gave me the official, 37-page thing with, all the stuff we discussed that day, the official diagnosis, and shockingly a diagnosis of ADHD, which at first I both was super shocked and didn't agree with. The more because I didn't really know much about ADHD. The more I learned about, if it's,
Yeah, you were very, you kind of, we knew going in that I think what it was you had time to accept the autism diagnosis. You hadn't even really thought about the ADHD.
No.
And so getting both of those at once, I'm sure was a lot.
Well, technically I got 3 from that appointment. I got autism, ADHD, and then I'd already had this from my primary, but she did generalized anxiety disorder.
Yeah, that's right.
I do have quite a few anxious traits that I feel like with time might get better, just with more accommodation and less masking. It might not, though. I've always been kind of anxious, so it's hard to say.
And then on top of all of those diagnoses, you also got a cake.
I did get a cake.
The story about that cake is amazing, and we'll save it for another episode, but I
don't like eating cake, but I like looking at cake.
Yeah, but I think one of the things that we both talked about when you got your diagnosis, and I talk about it a lot now as an advocate, we kind of discussed what?
Sorry to interrupt, but the people need to know.
Yeah.
My coffee has reached the perfect drinking temp.
Oh my god. Okay, we might as well end the episode. No, I'm just kidding. I think it was really important because after my diagnosis, I talked a lot about how grateful I was for my diagnosis because it gave me access to medication and treatment and didn't make me feel crazy, like there was a word to put to what I was going through. And I know we've talked about this a little bit. We'll get into it in an actual episode. But did you kind of have that with your autism diagnosis? I know it's a lot deeper because mine was a couple years in the making. Yours was a lifetime in the making that wasn't addressed. But did you feel any relief?
Yeah, I feel like this is a prompting question because he knows. I felt some relief immediately. It was like the 5 stages of grief. It was some relief into that. Having the actual diagnosis was nice, but I think I researched it enough that I was like, no, I whatever this person says, I am, and then if they say no, this fits. I'm gonna have to just get a second opinion because I'm I live with me 24/7. He lives with me, I don't know, whatever, minus sleep 7. I guess you're there.
Yeah.
You're just not awake, so it doesn't matter. So anyway, he's here a lot. So between the both of us, we were fairly certain, so I feel like I didn't have as much as he had as far as relief. I feel like there's something, I kind of knew what was going on by that point, because the process also was so long. What I wasn't expecting is, more recently, I think it hit last fall, a bunch of really beefy emotions of just, like I said, the 5 stages of grief, anger and resentment, not being diagnosed sooner, and I'm still very much in that stage. It's gotten better. I've been having a lot more accommodation just with Cody, also had some really big talks with close friends. about being diagnosed and kind of places I masked in the past and how much discomfort and
also what you need moving forward.
Yeah. So feeling like I can actually, go
advocate for yourself.
That and actually re-exist in the world instead of just isolating all the time. So I think the resentment piece comes in, especially with maybe I could have gotten help sooner. Anyway, with those hard feelings, we might delve into that in a future episode when I'm a little more comfortable with talking about some of it. Maybe have more time to work on some of it.
Well, and then I also just want to talk to you about what we're looking forward to the most out of discussions in this podcast, because we both have unique perspectives as individuals living with certain disorders, but also as caregivers. I know eventually I want to dive into some of the topics I've talked about through advocacy, which is sharing about your disorder or illness online. I think we can talk about treatments and medications. I think we can talk about just supporting friends and family with disorders. Are there any topics you're super excited to get into?
Yeah, I'm actually most excited to kind of dig into what autism looks like in an adult woman. Maybe how it's not taken as seriously, or it takes so long to get diagnosed because a lot of the traits that would maybe stick out more in a younger male with autism don't come forward as quickly or aren't as noticed for reasons I'm sure we'll get into later, but kind of how that experience has shaped my life and affected things. So
yeah, and I also want to bring on other people with mental illness or autism. We're going to bring on some doctors, psychiatrists. We're going to have guests throughout the show too. A lot of this though is going to be me and Allison having conversations over coffee, taking on different topics, talking about things happening in the world, especially things that pertain to schizophrenia or autism. I'm just really excited to get going with this because I know for me, advocacy has been a long time in the works, but it came from a place of being really nervous to share my story because of the stigma around mental illness and addiction. And recently with some of Allison's posts that we've done, we've seen more of a need to educate people about autism as well.
It's pretty confusing because we get all the way from, I'm an educator who works with autistic children and you don't seem anything like them. So more or less saying they don't think I have autism for that reason. All the way to things I won't repeat on here because they're incredibly offensive and a term called ableism. So kind of a spectrum of both, and not quite what I expected from people. So.
Yeah. I'm also excited to see what kind of questions our followers will have for us, because we do have two very unique perspectives, and so there's a lot of conversations I'm looking forward to with this. So if you guys are interested in supporting this venture and helping us get some more equipment so we can have actual microphones and not a mic on my camera 5 feet away, which I'm sure has amazing audio.
Because I'm having to project and I don't feel like this is my actual voice very much.
Allison has a very small...
I haven't used my baritone voice.
She has a very small voice, so we need to get actual microphones and stuff. So we do have a fundraiser posted. We'd love your support. Even if it's $1, $10, we have different tiers of things that you can get, including a drawing from Allison or some of our new shirts when they come out.
Disclaimer, Allison is not an artist. It's just for fun and entertainment.
That is true, and I put that on that tier as well. But we're excited. The video format of this will be posted on my YouTube page, which is the Schizophrenic Hippie YouTube page, but all the audio, everything like that, will be posted anywhere you listen to podcasts, so primarily Spotify and Apple Podcasts, but we're really excited to get started. You'll be able to hear this first audio already posted on any podcast platform. But we just want to thank you guys so much for letting us share our stories a little bit, and we're really excited to get into more discussions. Let us know down in the comments what topics you'd be interested in hearing from us. So on top of doing the Unseen and Unheard podcast, which is something I was able to do that's primarily about my experience with schizophrenia and several other individuals, we're also going to be doing this, which is going to be the NeuroBlend Podcast, and we're super excited about it. But that's all we have for you guys. My name's Cody.
My name's Allison.
And we really appreciate you guys listening. Be sure to like and subscribe, and follow NeuroBlend Podcast anywhere that you listen to podcasts.
We did it!
We did it!